The 1970s were a different world, a time of carefree fun and party games that, looking back, make us cringe a bit today. Let's explore the wackiest, most inappropriate games we used to play without a second thought. Spin the bottle. Spin the bottle was the ultimate icebreaker for teens in the 70s, turning friendly gatherings into nerve-wracking experiences. The bottle would point to two players who had to kiss, often in front of an entire crowd. Back then, it was innocent excitement, but today's consent-oriented culture might raise an eyebrow at the pressure to lock lips on demand. Who else felt those butterflies when the bottle spun your way? The Spanking Machine. A line of kids would form a tunnel with their legs or arms, and a loser, or sometimes the birthday kid, would crawl under, getting gentle, or not so gentle, swats along the way. It was all in good fun, or so we thought. These days, this game would likely spark outrage about personal boundaries. Do you remember giggling uncontrollably while hoping no one hit too hard? Cigarette passing contest. Teens, and sometimes even younger kids, would pass a lit or unlit cigarette from one person to the next, using only their mouths. The goal was not to drop it, but let's face it, this is a logistical and hygienic nightmare by today's standards. Did you ever witness this or know someone who tried it? If you're enjoying this fun look back at our weird and wild 70s party games, please hit the like button and subscribe. I've got more nostalgic surprises in store for you. Kissin' Corner. A more scandalous twist on games like hide and seek. If you found someone hidden in a particular kissing corner, you had to, well, you guessed it, kiss them. It created a flurry of embarrassment, laughter, and sometimes drama. Looking back, its clear boundaries were blurry, but in the 70s it seemed normal. Anyone else remember racing to avoid that corner? Bobbing for apples in questionable conditions. Sure, bobbing for apples is still around, but in the 70s it was often done in one big communal bucket. No freshwater changes, no separate bowls, just everyone's face going in the same tub. It might sound gross now, but back then, we barely thought twice about germs. Do you recall dunking your head in, determined to snag an apple first? The burping, or belching, contests. Yes, entire contests devoted to who could let out the loudest, longest burp. Kids and sometimes even adults joined in the fun, seeing it as a hilarious icebreaker. These days, we might consider that downright rude, especially as a party game. Who else got scolded by mom for excessive belching at a gathering? Muscle man or beauty queen pose off. At some parties, kids, and sometimes their parents, would stage mini pageants. Boys flexing muscles, girls striking pin-up style poses. While it was meant to be comedic, imagine the raised eyebrows today at putting kids on display in such a way. Did you ever pretend you were a superhero or movie star in front of an audience? Mystery food tasting. Blindfold a friend, feed them random foods, and have them guess what they're eating. It could be anything, from pickles to hot sauce, without warning. Nowadays, people might question the consent or safety. Food allergies, anyone? But it was a laugh riot in the 70s. Did you ever trick a friend with something spicy? Musical chairs with elimination bumps. Musical chairs seems harmless, but in the 70s, some parties played a rough version where the person failing to get a seat faced light physical consequences, like a playful shove or a mild whack. Today, that approach would probably shock parents. Do you remember dreading that moment when the music stopped? The whipped cream or shaving cream smash. It was pretty common at teen parties to surprise someone with a plate of whipped or shaving cream to the face if they lost a game. Hilarious for onlookers, not so much for the unsuspecting victim. While pranks still exist, this one might be considered a bit too messy and even mean by current standards. Were you ever on the receiving end of a face full of foam? Blind man's blow. A twist on Blind Man's Bluff. This version involved someone blindfolded while other players directed them to blow a small feather across the floor, often close to other people's feet or legs. It led to a lot of unintended contact and giggling. Looking back, the close proximity blowing factor would probably raise eyebrows today. Anyone remember collapsing in laughter as the blindfolded person stumbled around? Piggyback Races. Teams of 2 raced across the yard or living room with one person on the other's back. While it seems innocent, these piggyback races could be rowdy and downright dangerous if someone slipped. With no modern sense of liability or protective gear, the risk of bruises, or worse, barely registered. Did your knees or elbows pay the price for a badly timed tumble? Body outline drawing. A large sheet of paper or poster board was placed on the floor, and players would lie down so someone could trace their body. Afterwards, folks would decorate the outline with comical or suggestive details. What started as silly fun could quickly escalate into borderline risque doodles, something parents today might object to. Did you ever find your outline covered in questionable art? Candy from the toes. In some especially mischievous circles, friends would set up a kiddie pool or large basin of water and toss in wrapped candies or small toys. One at a time, you'd fish them out using only your toes. Some found it hilarious. Others thought it was plain gross. Now, we'd all probably be thinking about hygiene. Do you recall that initial squeal of disgust or delight? Smack the balloon! Wrestling. 2 players would each hold a balloon between their hips or bellies, then wrestle to pop the other person's balloon first without using hands. It led to awkward tangles and lots of up-close body contact that might feel too personal by modern standards. Still, the shrieks of laughter were memorable. Did you ever come out of this game with balloon shrapnel and zero dignity? The wrapped candy clothes game. Players would tape or pin wrapped candies all over their clothing, on sleeves, pant legs, even hats. The aim was for other players to remove and unwrap the candy using only their teeth, or in some versions, their lips. Sure, it created loads of giggles and awkward close encounters, but the idea of nibbling candy off someone's jacket these days might send a room into a collective cringe. Guess the mystery body part, typically played in a low-lit room. One guesser would be blindfolded and lightly touch someone's body part, hand, elbow, ear, etc., trying to identify it. It was all in good fun until someone decided to offer a trickier spot, like a knee or a belly button, prompting shrieks and red faces. Modern partygoers might consider this a step too far into personal space, but back then, it was a crowd pleaser. Did you ever scramble away when it was your turn to be touched? The strawberry shortcake face. Dunk. Imagine bobbing for apples, but replace the apples with strawberries and whipped cream on plates. Players would dunk their faces into a heaping dish, trying to pick out berries using only their mouths. No hands allowed. Whipped cream ended up everywhere, and someone inevitably sneezed or coughed at the worst possible moment. If you're picturing a hygiene nightmare, you're not alone. Any memories of emerging triumphantly with a strawberry in your teeth and whipped cream in your hair? Musical lap sitting. Chairs. A twist on musical chairs, but with fewer chairs than players. When the music stopped, if 2 people tried for the same seat, one was allowed to sit on the other's lap. This sometimes led to accidental collisions and snickers if the lap sitter was much larger than the seated person. The potential for awkwardness was sky high, though everyone seemed to find it hilarious in the moment. Were you ever stuck with someone on your lap after the music stopped? Truth or dare, or double dare. Truth or dare is still around, but 70s teens often added a risky spin. Double dare, which could involve outrageous tasks or borderline humiliations. From wear your underwear on the outside to steal a neighbor's newspaper, the game sometimes escalated into mild delinquency. Today, The liability alone would raise alarms, but back then, it was an adrenaline rush. Any tales of a dare gone way too far. Push the penny! Kiss chase. 2 players would place a penny on the floor and race to push it across a set distance, only using their noses or, in some versions, their lips. Onlookers cheered as the competitors crawled and huffed, faces often just inches apart. The unintentional closeness made for comical moments then, but would likely get a yikes now. Anyone recall laughing so hard you nearly forgot which way you were pushing the coin? Blindfolded Makeover. A group would pick one model, blindfold a stylist, and hand them a bag of makeup or face paint. The stylist guessed which product was which, applying lipstick to someone's cheek or eyeshadow to their forehead more often than not. It was uproariously funny, but the random touching and potential allergen factor might be a non-starter today. Did you ever cringe at the mirror afterward? The Handcuff Relay. Teams of 2 were handcuffed, or tied together at the wrists, and made to complete tasks, like retrieving snacks, climbing over obstacles, or even dancing to a record. While silly, the forced physical closeness could be uncomfortable and sometimes led to real tumble risks. Back then, though, it was a hearty laugh for everyone else. Were you ever stuck in the wrong partnership? Who's in the bag? Tickle guess. In a dimly lit room, volunteers would crawl into a large paper or cloth bag. Then someone else would poke or tickle from the outside. The guesser tried to identify who was in the bag by their reaction. Hilarious? Yes. A bit weird physically? Absolutely. These days, personal space concerns would likely quash this one. Anybody remember squeaking uncontrollably? Trying not to give yourself away? Spaghetti slurp contest. Imagine 2 people, each with one end of the same spaghetti noodle in their mouth, racing to reach the middle. The winner got to watch the other's face come dangerously close for an awkward near kiss. All in good fun then, but we can practically hear the collective "you" now. Did you ever end up nose to nose with your best friend or crush? The cup on the head, water race. Participants balanced small cups of water on their heads as they navigated an obstacle course, stepping over shoes, ducking under tables, or weaving around chairs. Spilling water earned playful taunts, and whoever stayed driest won. It was hilariously chaotic, though some grown-ups cringed at water all over the carpet. Still, we didn't think twice about mopping up a few puddles back then. Did you ever accidentally slip and create a mini flood? Pin the tail on the person. A twist on pin the tail on the donkey. This version had a blindfolded player attempt to pin something, like a paper tail or a goofy sign, on a friend. Of course, consenting to be the donkey didn't always happen, and occasionally someone got poked in an unfortunate spot. Nowadays, we'd likely ask, is this even safe? But in the 70s, it was a hit. Did you ever duck out of the way at the last second? Crying towel confession circle. Friends would sit in a circle, pass around a literal crying towel, and each person had to reveal a silly secret or embarrassing story before wiping their eyes with it. Theatrically, of course. While it was lighthearted, personal info sometimes came out that could cause real embarrassment. Today, that might spark concerns about privacy or teasing, but back then, it was meant to bring everyone closer. Who else remembers being mortified, but strangely exhilarated when your turn came? Footsie feud, balloon stomp. Everyone tied a balloon around one ankle. When the music started, players stomped around trying to pop each other's balloons, often resulting in near tackles, trampled toes, and minor collisions. Slightly rough, absolutely rowdy, and nowadays we'd probably worry about twisted ankles or worse. Who else relishes memories of the scramble to defend your last balloon? Cucumber in the knee relay. 2 teammates held a cucumber, or similarly shaped item, between their knees and tried to shuffle across the room and back without dropping it, often accompanied by raucous commentary from bystanders. Any fall meant starting over, and the suggestive visuals could prompt giggles and red faces. We rarely pause to question the innuendo, but it's impossible to ignore now. Did you ever cheat by giving your partner a sneaky boost? Looking back, these 1970s party games ranged from delightfully silly to downright cringe-inducing. But in those days, they felt like the height of fun. No one batted an eye at boundaries or germs like we do today. Still, there's something endearingly carefree about that era, wouldn't you say? What about you? Did you play any of these wild games, or do you have another 70s party memory that still makes you laugh or shudder? Drop your stories in the comments, and let's celebrate the bold, bizarre fun we used to have.